Welcome to my channel. For more videos, please remember to like and subscribe. The alien woman said to the human man, "Someone as handsome as you deserves to pass on his genes." Noah Mercer was 10 minutes into his lecture on mitochondrial latency decay when he noticed that half the alien audience had activated their translator slugs, and the other half had simply fallen asleep with their eyes open, which, unfortunately, meant their eyes were still staring directly at him. He paused mid-slide, wondering if his explanation of polymerase enzymes had somehow caused an interspecies diplomatic incident. The only awake attendee seemed to be the tall, silver-skinned woman in the front row with the long, pointed ears and a disturbing amount of eye contact. She was smiling. No, not smiling, studying him like a fascinating bacterium she intended to keep as a pet. He tapped the side of his tablet, coughed into the mic, and continued. So as you can see, the decay curve doesn't follow the expected pattern. Instead, we observed a subtle deflection beginning around the 72nd generation, almost like the genes are bored. Then a single hand raised, long fingers, elegant wrist. Somehow the skin looked like it had been crafted out of moonlight and stubbornness. She stood before he could call on her, which he had not intended to do anyway. "Excuse me," she said, her voice smooth, accent faintly melodic. "Someone as handsome as you deserves to pass on his genes." The translator slug in Noah's ear convulsed. The entire auditorium shifted from drowsy indifference to electrified confusion. A Crathulian in the third row dropped its beverage sack. One of the floating fungi exploded with a loud pop. Noah blinked. I think you might have misused a verb." "No," she replied cheerfully, stepping toward the stage. "I chose my words very carefully. You're proposing eugenics? I'm proposing collaboration," she said with a bow that could have been diplomatic or predatory, depending on what her species usually did before eating someone. "And perhaps a drink." The silence stretched to the point of metaphysical discomfort. "Let's circle back to the gene part later," Noah mumbled into his mic. So the slide, yes, this one, shows the correlation between latency and cytoplasmic thermal variance. But it was no use. The room had entirely abandoned the pursuit of knowledge in favor of watching a geneticist squirm under the gaze of what was, apparently, a romantically aggressive elf from space. Her name, he would later learn, was Lyra, and she was not just a delegate from the Alari species, but a high-ranking diplomatic geneticist with clearance above his pay grade and social skills that made him feel like a beige sock. By the time he made it off stage, he had been tagged in 800 interstellar reaction memes, including one where his face had been photoshopped onto a fertility idol. His inbox pinged with a message from Earth's delegation head. "Are you trying to start a war or a family? Please clarify." He escaped to the biodome courtyard, where synthetic breezes rustled intelligent plants that liked to gossip. One leafy shrub whispered nice ears, and he wasn't sure if it meant him or her. Probably her. The ears were impossible to ignore. She appeared beside him like a plot twist. "Are you always this sweaty after a lecture?" He turned. "Are you always this, forward with strangers?" "Yes," she said. "Time is not a luxury my species enjoys. I find honesty more efficient." "Well, I find coffee more efficient, but here we are." She tilted her head, intrigued. "Is that an offer?" "It was a complaint. Complaints can be very flirtatious on your planet, yes?" He buried his face in his hands. "Okay. Let's reset. Hi, I'm Noah. I analyze genetic decay patterns and panic in public. I am Lyra," she said. "I specialize in cross-species genomic stabilization and making human scientists uncomfortable." They walked in silence through the garden. A nearby flower giggled. Another tried to mimic Noah's posture. He hunched faster. "I don't usually flirt during summits," he said. "I don't usually attend summits. I was sent because I detected a genetic signal on Earth not present in any prior census. Yours. You scanned our genome database? I read your published paper on mitochondrial recursion and cross-referenced the authorship genome tag. You read my footnotes? I read everything." He felt a flush rising. "I didn't even think anyone read the footnotes." "I did. Yours were verbose and neurotic. It was charming. You should see my tax forms." "I would love to." He stopped walking. "Okay, listen. I'm not saying I'm not flattered or curious or very, very confused, but why me? There are 6 billion people on Earth. 7.9. Right. You read everything. She looked at him, and for the first time her expression softened into something gentler. Because of what you are. Not just human, not just intelligent. You are resilient. Your genome has adapted through more environmental stressors than most species encounter in extinction events. And you carry a splice marker, rare, ancient, likely recessive, but functional. It might be the key. To saving your species, to evolving both of ours. Noah's laugh was more a nervous bark. You want me to help create a hybrid solution? I want you to be part of something that changes the future. Do I get a lab? You get a ship? Do I get snacks? Snacks are mandatory, he sighed. Okay, but just so you know, my dating history is basically a field guide to disastrous miscommunications. Then we already have something in common, she said, and her smile was less terrifying this time. Later, when the Earth delegation filed their first official report of potential collaboration, they summarized it with the phrase, "Initial contact successful, pending emotional coherence." Noah summarized it differently in his journal. Day 1. Got hit on by a space elf. May have accidentally agreed to repopulate a dying civilization. Also, someone stole my lunch. The ship was alive. Not metaphorically alive, not romantically alive, not this AI has a name and it's Susan alive. No, the virili was biologically, technically, unapologetically alive. It blinked. It breathed. It sighed when Noah stepped on its floor, which was disconcertingly soft and mildly warm, like a very large, mildly offended cat. It's not judging you, Lyra said, watching him tiptoe down the corridor. It sighed. Ships don't sigh. It's just reacting to your bioelectric rhythm. That's worse. That's like stepping on someone's grandma. Don't flatter yourself. The virili is older than all your grandmothers combined. She led him past a series of glowing panels that pulsed with light in time to some internal heartbeat. Noah kept one hand on the wall in case it tried to eat him. He wasn't convinced it wouldn't. So, he said, in the tone of someone deeply uncomfortable and attempting small talk to distract from the unsettling fact that the corridor just blinked at him. What exactly do you need me for again? Other than, continuing your species. Lyra didn't stop walking, which was unfortunate because Noah wanted to plant himself somewhere solid and unblinking. The Ilari genome has been modified over generations for cognitive and sensory enhancement. We removed aggressive tendencies, optimized memory, added multidimensional visual range, and made all our food taste like smugness. That last one explains your protein bars. They are highly efficient. They taste like existential dread. They taste like victory. She finally stopped in front of a door, or maybe it was a membrane, or a very polite gelatinous iris, and gestured for him to enter. This is your lab. It grew itself to accommodate your genome preferences. My genome has preferences? All genomes do. Yours wanted coffee. He stepped inside. The room was bright, clean, vaguely humming. One wall was covered in displays, another in organic storage pods. In the center stood a terminal with dual interfaces, human and Ilari. A small black cube levitated beside it and chirped when he looked at it. That's your assistant, Lyra said. It's named Zib. The cube buzzed happily and displayed a digital emoticon. I like Zib, Noah said. Zib hasn't hit on me yet. Zib produced a bashful beep and spun in a small circle. Lyra moved toward the wall and gestured. A holographic genome sequence unfolded, layer by glowing layer. This is the Ilari root pattern. It's fraying. Noah squinted. That's not fraying. That's liquefying. Yes, elegant decay, poetic but terminal. He stared at it, then back at her. You've got, 50 years before your reproductive viability collapses? 42. Perhaps less. And you want to introduce human genes to stabilize this? Correct? You understand our species still puts cheese on everything and forgets how to fix printers. Precisely. Your genome is chaotic, adaptive, resilient. It's a mess. It's a miracle. He sat down, staring at the sequence. Zib offered him a stylus. Thanks, buddy, Noah said. Do not anthropomorphize the assistant cube, Lyra warned. It gets ideas. Zib displayed a tiny cowboy hat. Noah waved the stylus in surrender. Okay, fine, but if it starts writing poetry, I'm filing a complaint. They began the work slowly. At first, Noah just examined the sequence, muttering to himself and asking Zib for printouts that the cube did not, in fact, have the physical capacity to produce. It responded by projecting them mid-air smugly. Lyra observed, occasionally correcting his assumptions, often correcting his posture. You slouch like a defeated starfish, she said. I'm sorry, I left my dignified vertebrae on Earth. She studied him. You hide behind humor. I'm a scientist. If I didn't laugh, I'd cry, and that stains the equipment. By the third day aboard the Virili, Noah had stopped flinching every time the walls exhaled. He started to feel comfortable, at least until he discovered the bathroom was semi-sentient and gave him fashion advice while he brushed his teeth. It's telling me I need better pants, he told Lyra. It's correct. But comfort bred progress. He noticed something in the data, a subtle inconsistency, a glimmer, a nearly dormant gene cluster in the Alari pattern that looked eerily familiar. When he overlaid it with a human recessive marker found in about 1 in 20 million individuals, including, apparently himself, it aligned perfectly. This isn't just compatibility, he said, awe in his voice. It's symmetry. She came to stand beside him. Her ears flicked forward slightly, an Alari gesture that meant either curiosity or imminent headbutt. Not just that, it harmonizes. Like your genome was waiting for this, like we were. He stopped. The sentence felt dangerously close to something out of a romance novel, or worse, an interspecies dating sim. Scientifically adjacent, he finished lamely. Do not worry, Lyra said. I will not fall in love with you during Act 2. That would be too cliché. That implies this is a story. She looked at him. Everything is a story. Later that night, or what passed for night on a ship that regulated time via the digestive rhythm of its internal microflora, Noah lay in his sleeping pod and stared at the ceiling. It pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. Zib, he whispered, do you think I'm doing the right thing? The cube hovered into view and projected a thumbs up. You're biased. Zib displayed an image of a human and Alari DNA strand shaking hands. I hope this doesn't end with someone getting turned into goo. Zib displayed a gif of someone turning into goo, followed by the word unlikely. He closed his eyes. Back on Earth, the headlines had begun to stir. Alien diplomat wants human love child. Experts baffled. Is Noah Mercer the hottest fertility symbol in space? Meme speaks. Genes before genes. Why we're all Team Noah. And somewhere deep in the Assembly's intelligence grid, a new report flagged the human as a high-interest biological asset. Not because of what he had already done, but because of what someone very powerful believed he might yet become. Noah, meanwhile, was dreaming of protein paste that tasted like cookies and woke up disappointed. The problem with being genetically special, Noah realized, was that people stopped treating you like a person and started treating you like a piece of high-end lab equipment. Or, in Lyra's case, a cross between a savior and a walking gene vending machine. He wasn't even sure when it started. One minute he was adjusting enzyme parameters in a hybridization model, the next he was being escorted to an emergency session of the Intergalactic Assembly, wearing a borrowed tunic that kept trying to optimize his body posture. By tickling his spine every time he slouched, Lyra walked beside him, perfectly serene. Don't worry, the session will be brief. Your role is mostly symbolic like a mascot or symbolic like a human sacrifice. Somewhere in between. They passed a group of delegates from the Algorith Collective who looked like silver cubes stacked in different moods. One buzzed at Noah. Another unfolded a tiny flag that read, "Procreate responsibly." See? Noah muttered. This is why I didn't go into politics or performance art. The chamber was chaos. Half the representatives were arguing. The other half were live streaming the arguments. One gelatinous diplomat was broadcasting a mukbang of itself consuming an endangered fruit. Noah tried not to look directly at it. Lyra stepped onto the central platform and projected a revised genetic stabilization model mid-air. It shimmered with strands of light, pulsing in sync with Noah's own metrics, which the Virili had helpfully shared with everyone in a 400 light-year radius. This, she announced, is our hybrid solution. A murmur rose. Excitement? Confusion. One representative, a spiny crab thing from the Urelk Syndicate, clicked its claws furiously. You expect us to accept a half-earthling fix to a multi-species issue? No, Lyra said. I expect you to consider that your own genome is 3 adaptations away from spontaneous ribosomal collapse. My ribosomes are perfectly functional. You hiccuped for 17 minutes during the last conference. That was diplomatic passion. While the delegates spiraled into insult poetry, Noah leaned closer to Lyra. This isn't going well. This is going better than expected. A small explosion erupted from the far corner, followed by a minor food fight. Lyra turned to Noah. we need to leave. I was hoping you'd say that. They were halfway to the docking ring when a voice boomed through the comm system. Dr. Mercer and Envoy Velarin, please report to Decontamination Bay B7 for diplomatic reasons. That sounds fake, Noah said. It is definitely fake. Lyra agreed. They turned around anyway, mostly because the corridor had sealed itself shut behind them and the floor had started vibrating in a way that strongly implied cooperation was the polite option. Decontamination Bay B7 was empty. Too empty. Noah stared around the pristine chamber. Where are the decontaminators? I suspect they are in the walls. That's not comforting. Lyra tapped a panel, frowned, then spun. We're being jammed. I knew it. First genetic savior, then bait. This is why I stopped donating blood. The lights snapped to red. The room filled with a hissing gas that smelled like cinnamon and medical malpractice. Two figures shimmered into visibility, mercenaries, judging by their armor, and the fact that one was holding what appeared to be a modified particle net launcher covered in duct tape and optimism. Come quietly, one of them rasped. Can I scream at medium volume instead? Noah offered. Lyra stepped forward, casually removing a small rod from her belt. It extended with a hiss, glowing at the tip. That would be unwise. You're outnumbered, said the other mercenary. She tilted her head. You are mistaken. The viruli broke through the wall. To be more accurate, it grew through the wall. Tendrils of living hull material exploded inward, grabbed one mercenary by the ankles and flung him into a sanitation pod. The other tried to fire, missed, and was promptly wrapped in a sheet of bioorganic foam that hardened into a shape vaguely resembling a loaf of bread. Noah stared. Your ship loves you. It's possessive. I like it. They fled through the writhing corridor as alarms blared. Behind them, the mercenaries made soft whimpering sounds and occasionally asked for a lawyer. Back aboard the virule, Noah collapsed into his chair. Okay, so I'm starting to think this whole save a species with your DNA thing comes with more attempted kidnapping than advertised. Lyra adjusted a console. Someone is paying mercenaries to delay our project. Why? Because if we succeed, we change the balance of power. Hybridization means adaptability. That threatens those invested in stagnation. Noah groaned. Nothing brings out political sabotage like reproductive biology. Also, Lyra said, they may be jealous of your cheekbones. Not helping. Zib floated into view and displayed a meme of Noah holding a test tube labeled Sexy Science Jesus. Definitely not helping. But he was smiling despite himself. They jumped to warp. The stars stretched and sang. Lyra handed him a protein bar. He sniffed it suspiciously. This one tastes like peanut butter, she said. He bit in. It's actually edible. You're welcome. He chewed thoughtfully. You ever think maybe the universe is too weird? All the time. They sat in silence for a while, watching the stars. Noah leaned back. If this ends with me being crowned king of a planet I've never heard of, I want you to know. I'm going to insist on capes. Noted. And in the vastness of space, the viruli hummed in contentment. Not because its mission was over, but because, for the first time in a very long time, something new had begun. The jungle moon smelled like citrus and bad decisions. Noah hung upside down from a vine, arms flailing, while Lyra calmly used a plasma cutter to free her leg from a sentient shrub that had tried to propose marriage by absorbing her foot. I thought you said this planet was uninhabited, Noah yelled, trying not to swallow any glowing pollen floating past his face. It was uninhabited. That was 3 years ago. Things change. Did no one check again? There was a scheduling error. Also, someone spilled fermented Brelxy juice on the planetary scanners. I want it known, he said, swinging slightly, that this is not the kind of field work I was trained for. You weren't trained for anything involving marriage-minded vegetation. The vine supporting him vibrated. Then it giggled. Okay, Noah said, I take it back. I hate this place. They had crash-landed on Valar 5 after a sudden, inexplicable systems failure in the Virule's propulsion web. Lyra suspected sabotage. Noah suspected the universe was, on some level, just deeply invested in his suffering. Still, the moon had breathable air, edible flora, and low gravitational weirdness, which made everything just floaty enough to be annoying. Also, it emitted a constant low-frequency hum that made Noah feel like he was about to sneeze forever. By nightfall, local nightfall, defined by a massive pink gas giant blocking out most of the light, They had constructed a temporary camp using emergency nanofabricators, Zib's construction subroutines, and a lot of tense yelling about tent assembly instructions. "I don't see how you could fold a quantum sheet incorrectly," Lyra said, holding up what looked like a shimmering tarp twisted into the shape of a disgruntled swan. "It had diagrams, with impossible angles." "I'm not a wizard, Lyra." Zib displayed a diagram labeled, "How Not to Build a Shelter," featuring Noah's exact structure with a caption reading, "Nope." By morning, the shelter had collapsed. A flock of gravity-inverted birds had stolen their breakfast rations, and Noah's pants were humming. "Is this pollen sentient?" "It is," Lyra said, examining a cluster of spores under a portable microscope. "Also mildly euphoric. So I'm just high on alien joy dust?" "It's temporary. Define temporary." "You'll stop giggling in 12 hours, Noah giggled. "No, I won't." Despite the absurdity, progress crept forward. With the Virelay offline and their external comms scrambled, Noah and Lyra focused on refining the hybrid protocol by hand. Well, hand and cube. Zib performed complex genome simulations while projecting emoji reactions to each dataset. They sat beneath a canopy of bioluminescent trees that tried to harmonize with their voices. Noah caught Lyra humming once, and the entire grove joined in with a melody that sounded like a choir being tickled. During a quiet moment, he glanced at her. "Do you ever think we're making all this up?" She didn't look up from her work. "Every day. And yet we keep doing it, because the alternative is extinction." "Well, that's a bit dramatic. Our people are dying, Noah. Yours just don't realize it yet." He paused, sobered. "You really think humanity's on the same path? You're modifying yourselves without foresight, enhancing instinct at the cost of empathy, prioritizing efficiency over adaptability. It's a familiar trajectory." "I always knew social media would kill us." Lyra smiled faintly. "You might be the mutation that saves us both." "That's a lot of pressure for a guy who failed driver's ed 3 times. You have good instincts. I once tried to microwave aluminum foil. And survived." He laughed. "So what now?" "Now we test the prototype." They prepared the hybrid genome capsule, a self-replicating lattice containing both Ilari and human strands designed to be introduced into embryonic environments to slowly correct fragility over generations. Noah stared at the capsule. "It's so small. So is a virus. So is an idea. Yours are better behaved." Zib emitted a hopeful chime. They activated the capsule and watched as the simulation displayed slow, graceful stabilization. The genome twisted, bonded, adapted. For the first time, the Ilari sequence didn't unravel. It wove itself into balance. Noah exhaled. "It works. For now." He leaned back against a glowing rock. "You ever think about what comes after?" Lyra didn't answer immediately. "I mean," he continued, "after the gene stabilizing, after the politics and the crises and the endless planetary detours. Do you ever think about what you'd do if it was just over?" She looked at him. "No one ever asks me that. I'm asking. I'd build music from cell structures, compositions coded into DNA, harmonies that self-replicate. That's incredibly poetic and slightly terrifying. What would you do?" "I'd open a noodle stand on a moon with low rent." "That tracks." A long silence stretched between them. Then, "Noah, yeah? If this works, if we return and the assembly accepts it, things will change. Rapidly. Some will resist, others will weaponize the idea, and we will be symbols." "Right? Are you ready for that?" "Nope." She waited. "But I'm going anyway." He smiled. She nodded. The capsule glowed between them. Somewhere in the jungle, the joy pollen sighed, content. The assembly hall had never been so quiet. Not even during the infamous gelatin war debate, or when the Rilth ambassador accidentally proposed marriage to an oxygen tank. Noah stood in the center of it all, holding a capsule the size of a sugar cube and probably 10,000 times more controversial. He was wearing an official Earth delegation uniform, which was just a repurposed lab coat someone had ironed aggressively and stuck a flag on. Lyra stood beside him, her long ears twitching ever so slightly. Not nervous, attentive. The High Chancellor floated forward, a translucent orb filled with lesser orbs, each blinking at different frequencies. "You claim this object contains a viable solution to the Ilari genome crisis." "We don't claim," Noah said, voice steady. "We proved." Lyra projected the final sequence, glowing threads weaving in midair, both human and Ilari, folding into one another like a handshake no one had ever thought to try. The data scrolled behind them. Compatibility ratios, reproductive metrics, long-term stability models. And then, a simulated projection of Alari-human hybrids across 3 generations, each iteration stronger, healthier, and still entirely themselves. The chamber buzzed with silence, then a voice. "And you're not concerned this will erase Alari identity?" Lyra stepped forward. "No, because we are not erasing, we are evolving. Identity is not a static fossil to preserve in a museum. It's a living, breathing thing, like your uncle who keeps changing his name and species." A chuckle rippled through the delegates. Even the Urelk representative clicked one claw in reluctant amusement. "Why him?" asked another delegate. "Why the human?" Lyra looked at Noah. "Because his genome carries resilience. Not perfection, not supremacy. Resilience. And because he said yes when he didn't have to." Noah raised a hand. "Also because I'm told my cheekbones can deflect low-level plasma fire, but mostly the resilience thing." Laughter again. Nervous, hopeful, a vote was called. The results took 37 seconds, during which Noah composed a mental grocery list and Zib danced behind his back, projecting celebratory sparkles. The motion passed, not unanimously, but decisively. Outside the chamber, the media storm began. Galactic Assembly approves interspecies hybridization project. Noah Mercer, hero, scientist, or accidentally important? Alari human baby predictions, cutest or creepiest. Noah ate a celebratory protein bar, which still tasted like regret, and watched the chaos unfold from the Virile's observation deck. Lyra joined him. "They've already made action figures." "Do they talk?" "One of them says, 'Someone as handsome as you deserves to pass on his genes.'" He groaned. "I'm never going to live that down." "No." He leaned on the railing. "So, now what?" "Now the first sequence is introduced to Alari embryos. Carefully, quietly, and then we wait." "How long before we see results?" "A generation. So I won't get to see it?" "You'll see the beginning." He was quiet for a moment. "Is that enough?" "It has to be." They watched the stars in silence. Later, back on Earth, Noah was offered awards, medals, a reality show deal, and a free lifetime subscription to Intergalactic Science Monthly, which he accepted only because he liked their crossword puzzles. He declined most interviews. The story wasn't his alone, he said. He'd been lucky, smart enough to say yes, dumb enough not to run. He moved into a small lunar research station on the dark side of Earth's moon, working with both human and Alari scientists to refine the hybrid protocol and expand it, carefully, cautiously, to other species with similar genomic instabilities. He grew quieter, more deliberate, less sarcastic, but still deeply skeptical of vending machines. Zib remained at his side, eventually upgraded to handle coffee. Lyra visited often, sometimes to work, sometimes just to sit in silence and eat protein bars shaped like philosophical dilemmas. One night she handed him a data pad. "This just came in," she said. He opened the file. A single image, an Alari infant. Pale skin, long ears, and undeniably human eyes. Healthy, stable, laughing. He stared for a long time. "Then you think she'll ever know?" Lyra smiled. "She'll know enough." He nodded. "Then I'm good." He leaned back, eyes closed. "By the way," he said, "if I was a genetic savior, shouldn't I get a better chair? You designed this chair." "Exactly. I made a mistake. You are resilient." "That's polite for you'll probably trip but survive." "Yes." They sat together, watching the stars shift, and somewhere far away, a heartbeat echoed in a species that was no longer dying, just changing, like all the best stories do. The end.